Hello guys, welcome to this new class. Today we are going to learn about the zero and first conditional, how to use them, and the specific rules to form sentences with them. So let's go. The first question that we have to solve or to answer is, what is a conditional? Well, conditionals are sentences with two clauses, an if or when clause and a main clause that is the result of the condition. These two clauses are related each other. Now let's begin with the zero conditional. We use the zero conditional to talk about things that are always true, things that are undeniable. So here we have the two clauses, the two parts of the zero conditional. The first part is the if or when clause, that is the condition. The second part is the main clause, that is the result of this condition. Okay? Now the structure. For the if clause, we are going to start with the words if or when, and the verb should be in simple present tense. Now, for the main clause, we are going to use the verb also in simple present tense. Then here we have an example of a sentence in zero conditional. That is, if you heat water, it boils. Or using the word when you heat water, it boils. As we can see, the red part is the one that is giving us the condition. The condition for what? For the main clause. If this happens, this is the result. If you heat water, what happens? The water boils. And as we can see, all of the verbs are conjugated in simple present tense. Heat and boil. Okay. We have some tips or some rules for the zero conditional. The first one is that the order of the if clause and the main clause is not important. We can switch them. We can put first the if clause and then the main clause, or we can change them and put first the main clause and in second place the if clause. It doesn't matter. Now, if we start with the if clause, we have to separate the two clauses with a comma. Okay, this is very important. If the first clause is the if clause, we have to separate the if clause from the main clause with a comma. In zero conditional sentences, you can replace if with when. It doesn't matter if you use if or when. The meaning is the same. Okay, here for example, ice melts if you heat it. Look, here we used the main clause first and the if clause in second place. That's why we don't have to use a comma here. But in this example, when you heat ice, it melts. We are using the if or when clause first. That's the reason why we have to use a comma to separate it from the main verb. And the third example, ice melts when you heat it. Okay. There are some more examples. If you heat water, it boils. If the sun goes down, it gets dark. The lights turn on when you push that button. When you heat ice, it melts. If it rains, the grass gets wet. As we saw, we can identify the if clause as the red one and the main clause as the yellow one in each of these sentences. Just for you to know, guys. Okay, we have 4 more examples. If you freeze water, it becomes a solid. We can see that the if clause is the first here. That's why we use the comma. Plants die if they don't get water. If my husband has a cold, I usually catch it. If you mix red and blue, you get purple. So in all of these examples, we can see that the condition is the red one, and what is the result of that condition? The action that happens in the yellow sentence. Okay? If you freeze water, what happens? The water becomes a solid, becomes ice. Okay, plants die. This is the result. When? Or with what condition? That they don't get water. If they don't get water, what happens with the plants? They die. Now, in this kind of sentences, in zero conditional, we can also use adverbs of frequency to modify the certainty of the result. The zero conditional structures are used to talk about results that happen depending on the conditional or if clause. Sometimes we need to change the certainty of the second action with an adverb of frequency. So let's see these examples. If it rains, I always take an umbrella. Okay, here we are having a 100% of certainty for this action or for this part of the sentence. I always represent a 100%, always. Every time that I take an umbrella, it's because it's raining, okay? If it rains, I always take an umbrella. When the sun shines in Spain, the weather is usually hot. Now look here, the certainty changes. It's not 100%, but it's like 70%. I never take the train if the buses are running on time. Look, in this part, the word never means 0% of certainty. I never take the train if the buses are running on time. When I find a good series on Netflix, I often binge watch all weekend. So this is how we can modify how certain or how true is an action that we are using in a conditional sentence. In this case, zero conditional. Okay, now let's go with the first conditional. When do we use the first conditional? We use the first conditional when we believe the condition and result can and probably will happen in reality, but they are not 100% certain, like the zero conditional that we just saw. Now let's look at these structures, okay? Well, first conditional has the same parts: an if clause, that is the condition, and a main clause, that is the result. But when we look at these structures, we're going to find that yes, the if clause has if, and the verb should be conjugated in simple present tense. But what happens with the main clause? Look at this. We are going to conjugate the verb in future simple tense with will. Okay, so how's that possible? Let's look with one example. If the weather is nice, I'll go to the park. Right here, we can notice that the verb to be is in present simple if the weather is nice, but the result or the consequence is conjugated in future. I'll go to the park. Remember that I'll is a contraction of I will. Okay, so we are using the future simple with will. And we can see that in first conditional is commonly used the contractions of the personal pronouns and apostrophe double L to sound like more casual or more fluent. Well, here we have some examples of the first conditional. I'll take the train if the station is still open. If the company doesn't win the contract, they won't give me a bonus. We'll leave tomorrow if it starts snowing. Look that if we start with the main clause, we don't have to use the comma, but if we start with the if clause, we have to put it to separate both of these clauses. Well, the first conditional is also used to warn others of the probable results of certain actions. Here we have 3 examples to show you how we can warn others using sentences in first conditional. For example, if we don't hurry, we'll miss our train. So, if we don't do this with this condition, something can happen to us, or something that is not good for us could happen. What is that? We'll miss our train. Okay, so this is the condition, and this is the result, the possible result. And it's at the same time it is a warning, because it's something that maybe we don't want to happen. The second example says, you'll lose the contest if you don't practice. It's like a warning that we have to do something to avoid something bad or something that we don't want to happen. They'll get lost if they get into the forest. We can also use modals like can, may or might, must, and should, as well as imperatives. Imperatives are verbs for giving instructions in the result part of the sentence instead of using the auxiliary will. Okay? And the modal verbs can also change the certainty of the result, because some of them are used for probability, some of them are used for giving permission or denying it, and some of them are used for obligation or suggestion. Let's look at these 4 examples that we have here. The first one is, if the children finish their homework, they can play outside. Okay, so in the result, we're talking about giving permission. They can play outside if they if this condition happens. Okay, if they finish the homework, that's the condition. What happens? The result is that they can play outside. They are allowed to play outside. The second one, you might win if you buy a lottery ticket. This is a probability in the future, but it's not a 100% probability. Okay, it's something like lower than that, like a 70%, for example. You might win if you buy a lottery ticket. It's something that could happen, but you're not completely sure of it. If she orders the present now, it should arrive before his birthday. This is something that we expect to happen, okay? That we expect to happen in a specific time. So if this is the condition, if this happens, if she orders the present now, this could be the result. It's not sure. There's a probability. That's what we expect as normal. You must wear a helmet if you ride a motorbike. In this case, this is the condition. If you ride a motorbike, what is the result? You must wear a helmet. But must gives a tone of obligation, okay? Something that you have to do, an order. You must wear a helmet. Well guys, this is all. Thank you very much for paying so much attention, and I hope you liked the class. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.